It's the BOL Recruiting Roundup on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Travis Schreier, senior analyst for BOL. There's Andrew Bone. There's Tim Watts. And we have a lot to talk about on this Monday. Huge recruiting weekend for the Crimson Tide, as you might expect, with LSU in town. And boy, it sounds like Tim Watts, Andrew Bone. You want environment, you want atmosphere, you want the program to be able to sell itself as it has done in large part over these last 15 or 16 years. Sounds like that was the case over the weekend in T-Town.
Yes, it had to be amazing. I mean, you know how it's like every game on the message board. There's that guy watching from home that says, "Hey, it looks dead, so quiet." Well, that guy didn't even show up this week, so I know the crowd was fantastic to shut that down. Unbelievable environment. We're hearing about it before the game, the excitement during the game, after. I know Andrew's the same way. Hearing from parents or coaches or people who were there or fans, and absolutely off the chart. Also know it was a huge deal because LSU fans are going, it's all right. It's not, it's not bad. So that they environment, because they pride themselves in LSU on those Saturday night games. But it was literally off the chain. It was incredible environment.
Yeah, I'm 38 years old, and I think it was the first time that I have not been to Tuscaloosa for an Alabama LSU game. So it kind of sucked being at home, watching it on television rather than being inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. But just from talking to different people who were there, not only recruits or coaches, but talking to even friends and family who were in attendance, they were just like, it was one of the absolute best game atmospheres they have seen in a really long time. I think with Alabama's team this year, and maybe even a little bit last year, people don't know what to expect sometimes. So you're going in there, you're getting loud, you're excited about the game, what's at stake. I mean, Alabama has one loss, they can't afford another one. So these, all these fans, even recruits who are in attendance, they're being as loud as they possibly can, and throughout the entire game. So, back when, back in the mid 2010s, fans weren't really that loud. I mean, because Alabama was just blowing teams out left and right every single week, going throughout the season, not losing any games. So now it's like, all right, got to get loud, and it's certainly helping, Crimson Tide football team.
Another thing I think that factored in was last year's home schedule was brutal. I mean, Andrew remembers trying to talk to kids about visiting, and there just wasn't a lot of big games last year. Their opponents, it was brutal, wasn't it? It was just brutal. Like they didn't play a lot of big games at home, and if they did, it wasn't against a highly ranked opponent. And this year, we knew Texas, humongous team coming to Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee, the two teams that beat them last year, coming there. So also, I think you saw Nick Saban. Me and Travis talked about this last week. I think you saw Nick Saban kind of will this to happen because they were so great against Tennessee. He went and thanked them. And, like that, like throwing that pet a trick, they are ready to bark for Coach now. So I think we saw all that come together at one time. It was pretty impressive.
I think Andrew kind of hit on it too. Sometimes it takes a loss earlier in the season to provide that urgency, even from the fan base. Think about 2014, the loss at Ole Miss, and then how that crowd kind of evolved as you got to the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa that year. That was one of the more memorable atmospheres that I can recall. That shootout, what was it, 55-44 kind of game, kind of like LSU the other night.
Yeah.
2015 had the early season loss again to Ole Miss, and then Tennessee at home, LSU at home later in that season. You don't want a loss, but sometimes it can certainly help you keep your fans on the edge of their seats in games like this in November. So we talk about the weekend. I know there wasn't a big number of official visitors. Really, Alabama doesn't have the slots remaining at this point to have big weekends. But what are we hearing on the official visit front, guys, from Alabama LSU?
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, you had two official visitors on campus this weekend. You had Elias Williams, a four-star defensive lineman out of Hudson High School down in Florida. He's committed to Mizzou. And you also had, oh my gosh, Jay-Sean Ross out of Missouri, out of Kansas City, Missouri, 6'4", 220-pound outside linebacker. A little bit of a difference. Elias Williams was offered back in August, about 2 days before he committed to Mizzou. So he's starting to receive a lot more attention from a lot of different schools, including Tennessee, USC. But he was in town, and I don't think we're going to see any sort of quick decision from him as far as making a decision if he's going to stick with Mizzou or continue or potentially flip to Alabama. I think we're going to see him take some more visits, maybe do something in December. But heard he had a great trip to Alabama. We should have something on Bama Online, either later today or on Tuesday. And then Jay Sean Ross. This is a kid that I think Alabama probably wishes they would have jumped on a little bit sooner. From a physical standpoint, really impressive. They went and watched him play a couple of weeks ago. He plays on both sides of the football, wide receiver and that edge position, but mainly being recruited as an edge backer. And I think that Alabama is going to have a really good chance to potentially get on him late. We'll just kind of see how it all unfolds. But those are the two official visitors for Alabama this weekend.
I need to interrupt because we had two basketball official visitors, and we are now we are a basketball program. I know because I've loved basketball. Travis knows this since my whole life. And I wanted a fan base that was as rabid as it is now. Well, it's here. I mean, they are mad if we don't mention them. And Alabama had two nice. You
had an interesting nugget on that. As a matter of fact.
Nos Cunningham. This is an interesting guy. Came in for an official visit. Was previously ranked the #1 player in the country. Was a top 10 prospect. I think Alabama, Nate Oates and them, I think they did a fantastic job. And we're hearing that he could be committing in the near future. Yeah, we had a nugget on it. I think Alabama did a great job on that visit. Also had a kid named Travis Perry. So I feel like, we're probably going to pay that hoops team a little bit more attention because they're sneaking up on us. And, football wraps us up because there's so much going on. But I looked up, Nate Oates was in a finalist for every top 10 player in the country. So I don't want to get in trouble with our basketball guys. But, yeah, I think the visitor weekend overall went great for all four of those guys. I think Alabama is sneaky involved with Elias, like Andrew said. But, we're kind of at that phase with recruiting where nobody really wants to tell you because signing day's 6-7 weeks away. So we're almost at the finish line of keeping it a secret. But Alabama's involved with a lot of guys that are going to come down what they're fighting and battling for.
Andrew,
a lot of these, final decisions is probably going to be reached after these in-home visits for these head coaches because it's about to be in-home visit season, and Nick Saban's about to go into a lot of homes, probably even some kids that we're not even talking about right now, to sell the Alabama program to them.
Sure.
So it's about to be this next month and a half is going to be really intense.
So Andrew, in some ways, was the weekend at least as impactful, if not more impactful, when you're talking about 2025s and beyond?
We also had a lot of, not just official visitors who were in Tuscaloosa, but you also had a lot of unofficial visitors, guys that are in the 2024 class, like Kewan Lacey, 4-star running back out of Texas, who Alabama has really amped things up with him over the course of the last month or so. Just decommitted from Nebraska, so having him on campus was big. Solomon Williams, 4-star edge rusher out of Carrollwood Day down in Tampa. He was back on campus. We're probably going to see a decision happen from him sometime within the next couple weeks. I don't think we're going to get into December before he makes a decision. And then we saw some other, some guys who were committed elsewhere on campus this weekend. Perry Thompson, a former Alabama commitment, was back in town. DeMarcus Riddick was also on campus. One other, intriguing prospect that we saw on campus this weekend was Darius Hayes, top 100 linebacker out of Largo High School in Florida. Is committed to Florida. So you had some guys who are committed elsewhere on campus, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. As far as making a big impact, you had a lot of 2025 and 2026 recruits who were on campus. A lot of big names, especially in-state. Naheem Alford, #1 cornerback in the country out of Parker High School. He was back in town. You also had Jakeem Stewart, #1 defensive recruit in the 2026 class, who is in Tuscaloosa. George McIntyre, #2 quarterback in the country in 2025. He was on campus. So, getting a lot of those guys in that atmosphere, in that environment, all the lights. I mean, it was I mean, I'm sure many people saw the video that Alabama posted of the players running out the tunnel onto the field. I mean, that was one of the coolest videos that I've seen that Alabama's put out. I mean, it's hard to. I tell you what, if I'm a recruit, it's hard not to commit after being in a atmosphere like that on Saturday night.
Tim, now that Andrew talked about all those committed elsewhere guys that were on campus, he's got me in flip mode. So I'm going to ask both of you the one flip that's out there for Alabama that you think could be most impactful for this 2024 class.
I like Elias. I think they're looking for guys on the, it's not a great year at defensive line. I say that about basically every position because it's true. It's not a great year on the defensive line. I think you look at Elias Williams, they've got a couple guys they really like in Beeman and Faga committed. They've got to figure out how to get 4 guys probably in this class. Could lose a few guys definitely to the draft graduation. So he's the one I'm most intrigued about. One, because I think Missouri's did a really good job recruiting in the defensive line. They have a couple of big-time prospects in there, so I trust their evaluations. 2, Alabama's made him a priority. And, again, you can't have enough defensive linemen. We always talk – we don't talk about defensive line like we do offensive line, but I'm of the opinion you got to sign 4 to 5 offensive linemen in every class, just hoping to hit on 5 every year, 5 starters. And I feel the same way about the defensive line where you rotate them in so much.
Yeah, it seems like almost all of Alabama's flip targets are on the defensive front with Elias Williams. They're trying to flip William Eccles, defensive line commitment for Ole Miss. Dalen Evans, who's committed to Texas A&M, may be coming in for Unofficial. But I'll go to a different area on the defensive side, and I think Alabama would really like to add another linebacker. And there's 2 guys. Tristan Jernigan out of Tupelo High School in Mississippi has been to Alabama a few times since his commitment to Texas A&M. Still committed to the Aggies, but as of right now, expecting to visit Alabama again in December. And then I mentioned Darius Hayes, linebacker out of Largo, Florida. Being on campus this weekend, I think it gives Alabama an opportunity to potentially bring him back for an official visit in December. So we'll see if he makes the trip back. But I think Alabama would really like to get one more linebacker in this class, at least an inside linebacker, and I think those are 2 guys that we're going to be watching pretty closely moving forward.
All right, it's time for the Uncle Tim segment, but Andrew and I will try to chip in as well. It is Kentucky week for Alabama, so when you think of Alabama recruiting in the state of Kentucky, I guess it starts with Sean Alexander, right? I mean, that's got to be the top of the list. But Uncle Tim, do you have maybe a Jedrick Wills story for us for story time?
I got a bad story. We just came off Halloween. I'm not going towards Thanksgiving yet. I'm still in spooky mode. I'll go Matt Elam. A guy, when you said Kentucky, that's the first one I thought. I mean, I know I know I'm going at my mind's in the wrong angle, but I thought Matt Elam, nose tackle, 340 at the time, Alabama, Notre Dame.
I think he was a little bit bigger than 340.
Well, he at the time, and then Thanksgiving and everything happened, and he got a little bigger. But nose guard, nose tackle, Alabama wanted him. Lance Thompson had him, and it was Notre Dame, who was a college playoff type team at the time, Alabama, and then it was at Kentucky. And, it was almost that reverse basketball where it's like Alabama's recruiting a basketball guy looking at Kentucky and North Carolina, and you're like, no way. Well, Matt was the one that got away. Wasn't a great player at Kentucky, kind of a role player. But certainly if you're talking about great players, I love Jedrick Wills, but Sean Alexander, the whole story about him going to Michigan for an official visit during the season, it was snowing, and he was like, nope. And ended up in Alabama. I've always thought that was one of the best stories. And also, you're talking about a guy who was MVP of the National Football League. I mean, you're talking about a guy that had some of the biggest rushing games in Alabama history and did it like he wasn't even trying. So, yeah, not more memories than I expected for the state of Kentucky.
Another Kentucky running back, Damian Harris. Damian Harris was going into his announcement, and he come out and said this, that he was going to come out and say he was committing to Kentucky, even though I don't know at the time, you have to kind of look back as far as why we were predicting Alabama, but he said he was going in to commit to Kentucky, and then all of a sudden Alabama just came out of his mouth. and stuck with it.
I love those stories. I love those stories that come back after. Like, I was going to Notre Dame and I got in the car and, they were playing Sweet Home Alabama on the radio. And I'm like, Bama. I love that. I love that. I love the after stories of like, I walked up to the podium and boom, changed I didn't even know what was coming out. I love those. But I will say I always use Damien as the guy with Travis of like they had to drag him off campus, right? He never wanted to go.
He was Mark Ingram Bammer status.
Never wanted to leave college. He loved it.
And so going back to your flips earlier, Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good
one.
Kentucky. Yeah. And this is after Tua was committed to Alabama. So Alabama took 2 quarterbacks in that class. And
Mac called me in like March after the signing period. And I didn't know him that well. It's kind of like flew under the radar, then flipped and everything got quiet. We were after the bigger targets. And he said, I thought he was accusing me. He's like, why does everybody keep saying I have to be worried about Tua and Jalen? And I was like, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking it right now. You got to be worried, buddy. And he's like, they should be worried. And I was like, oh, well, all right then.
There's a reason why Nick referred to him as Johnny McEnroe. He was a little fiery.
He was very confident coming out of high school, which I thought was going to help him. I thought,
oh my gosh, I would say it.
He better be, right?
Well, he did say, I was like, I didn't write that. I would never write that. Anybody should be scared of anybody. And he said, no, like when I go to the store, everybody's asking me what I was thinking. I was like, well, they're not wrong. I mean, it's Tua and Jalen. They're pretty talented guys. So one of the craziest moments, just a random call out of the blue. Like, hey, I thought I was being like, hey, why are you saying that?
And he came close to adding Gardner Minshew to that group, right?
Gosh, you kidding me? Brock Purdy, all these names we heard.
He was coming, wasn't he?
Heck, Minshew was committed. He was going as
it was a done deal.
He was basically just wanting to play a year at Alabama so that he could become a grad transfer or a graduate assistant.
Yeah,
and wanted to end up coaching.
Be a coach, and
did he start in the NFL yesterday?
Hey, he started for the Colts. He beat Bryce yesterday.
Yes, I was about to say this.
Rest in peace, Mike Leach. Mike Leach saw something in him, told him, "Hey, you're going to throw for 4,000 yards next season for us, so come here." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to."
Yeah, it would take an offense like that to get me to go to Pullman, Washington, probably, guys.
I got a feeling Leach is a pretty good sales pitch. You know what I mean? I think he's pretty cut into the drive. Cut and dried with it. We remember Leach with the Greg McElroy flip.
Yeah, he didn't take that one too well, as I recall.
He did not wish Gregory good luck.
Did he try to put him in that shed with Craig James's kid?
Oh,
maybe?
Boy. In his defense, Greg had told him the whole time he was firm and that Bama wasn't a factor. And then Tebow committed, and me and Travis started the dominoes that led to lawsuits being threatened. There was some.
I remember Cotton Bowl practice, and Alabama was working out at SMU for the 2006, I guess, Cotton Bowl 2005 season, and Greg came out to practice, and that was something else. That little sequence proved beneficial to the Nick Saban era too.
Travis, I will say this, going back to the weekend, when you referred to what it does, we've seen this weekend pay off dividends down the road because there's not a lot of football games left, right? So these kids are limited in their final 3 or 4 weeks that they can visit. For some of these guys, this will be their last impression, even if it's not the last game they attend. How many games are going to hit that intensity? Look at the schedule. How many have the potential to hit that?
Alabama just has Chattanooga left. That's all they've got at home.
I'm talking about across the nation.
Right, right.
Michigan, Ohio State will play. It's going to be a day game. They can't hit that environment. When you look at the big games, there's just not a lot across the nation left, really. Florida State, Miami's not going to hit that. When you start looking at these big matchups, there's just not a lot left. So that's going to be the last impression or the best impression for a lot of these recruits.
Well, we can expect. Well, I think we'll certainly expect Auburn to be loud for the Iron Bowl.
Gainesville will be electric for Florida State. You still have those kind of matchups, but
are those night games? Because the night just kind of if they're not night games, it changes because the night just kicks it off at a different level.
I think Florida State will probably be CBS 2:30 because since that game's in Gainesville, CBS gets to pick. Now, if it were in Tallahassee, maybe it's a night game. So, yeah, you're right.
You got to hit on the night. You can't do your cell phone light in the day.
And what about weather too in all this? I mean, it matters too. All the factors came together for Alabama.
Because it was freezing a few days earlier in Alabama. It was freezing.
Yeah, the James Spann effect. Tim's got on his suspenders now, so I know where we're headed with this.
I'd wear those, but I really don't need them with cargos. I think I'm pressing my style.
Yeah. That might be a tough pull off. Andrew, leave us with something as we get out of here. You too, Tim. Final impression from the weekend. You talked about it in relation to basketball too. The Alabama men's hoops and women's hoops teams, a doubleheader at Coleman Coliseum on Monday night. So it's here. Give us that final thought as we wrap up the recruiting roundup.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a big, weekend. We're going to have a lot of recruiting nuggets that are going to drop on Bama Online later on today, kind of going through, all of these guys, kind of where things stand after the weekend. But, it should be a fun month on the recruiting front with, a lot of, and I always say this, but a lot of twists and turns, a lot of kids that are going to end up visiting that, in December that, we haven't really talked much about throughout the year, but it'll be a lot of fun. Just go to Bama Online, get all the recruiting information there, especially all the nuggets. But Zion Grady announcing his decision this week. I believe it's on Wednesday. Top 100 edge rusher in the state of Alabama out of Charles Henderson High School. We'll have a final prediction on Bama Online probably sometime today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I think when you look at the 24 class, and of course Zion's in the 25 class, so they're already putting bricks in there for that group, which has a chance to be special. But with 24, I think they're just spot picking. They want to add a couple of linemen, like Andrew said, an inside back or a running back. Got to get a running back in this class, which is a very interesting situation. You have guys that they're still on the table. Not a great running back year, as we've alluded to, but there's some good running backs. I'll tell you, Robert Gillespie, he's kicking over the rocks, finding guys to recruit. He was the one that went out and got Keywan Lacey, offered a kid, what's his name, Javon Baugh offered him this past weekend. So he's did a good props to him for doing a good job of finding guys. But they're down to basically hold on to what you got. Remember, kiddies, all flips aren't good flips. Sometimes it's better to keep what you got and add a little bit more and then just kind of go from there.
Sometimes you flip and sometimes I guess you get flipped.
Yeah. Sometimes you're the cook, sometimes you're the flapjack. So it's going to be exciting, but I really think that 2025 class is going to pick up a little bit steam too. And last note would be, Andrew mentioned it, Saban's going in-home. I'm not sure there's a much better in-home guy than Nick Saban. There might be some, you might say some's as good, but I think Nick Saban
starts line dancing, it's over.
Yes, when you turn on the radio and he hits the carpet, moves the coffee table out of the way, that's a heck of a sales pitch.
Starts biting that bottom lip with those hands going. It's over. It's lights out.
Absolutely. But fantastic weekend. It's a good time to be doing this pod.
Absolutely. And a lot of coverage for you. All the coverage at BamaOnline.com. Hey, Andrew, Tim, thanks again, man.
I appreciate it. See you next week.
All right. For Andrew Bone, Tim Watts, Travis Schreier, thanking you for joining us right here on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Come hang out with us at the roundtable. If you want to be in the know when things happen as they happen, the roundtable with us at BamaOnline.com is absolutely the place to be. Until next time, so long, everybody.